Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Monday night, January 26th, 2026, as we record this show. In 4 days, will be Sox Fest, as the Chicago White Sox will hold a season ticket holders only event on Friday night, January 30th, and then host Sox Fest Live on Saturday night, January 31st at the Remova Theater in Bridgeport. The White Sox have also packed up their gear and sent the moving truck down to Camelback Ranch. All this means is that we are getting close to spring training starting and really ramping up for the 2026 season. Since our last episode, the White Sox have spent some of that payroll flexibility they acquired after trading Luis Robert Jr. to the New York Mets. High leverage reliever Seranthony Dominguez signed a 2-year, $20 million contract to help bolster the bullpen. The White Sox also signed veteran outfielder first baseman Lamonte Wade Jr. to a minor league contract, giving manager Will Venable another option while trying to construct a 26-man roster. But on Monday, the San Francisco Giants signed outfielder Harrison Bader to a similar deal that the White Sox signed Dominguez with at 2 years and $20.5 million, which is a fascinating case study of free agent spending allocation. Would you rather have a high-leverage reliever or an aging outfielder that still displays a skill set to play average defense in center field? We'll have that debate later in the show and ponder what the next White Sox move is going to be this offseason. First, some World Baseball Classic news as final rosters are due in early February. Japan late Sunday night in the United States announced their final roster, and it does include new White Sox first baseman Munetaka Murakami. Thanks to reporting from MLB.com, Team Japan is expecting the MLB-based players to join them in Osaka on March 2nd for an exhibition game before Pool C play begins. Japan is paired up with Australia, South Korea, the Czech Republic, and Chinese Taipei in their pool. Murakami's first World Baseball Classic game is set to be at 4 a.m. Central Time on Friday, March 6th at the Tokyo Dome against Chinese Taipei. For other White Sox players, Curtis Mead is expected to play for Team Australia, and we are waiting word if Kyle Teal will suit up for Team Italy, and if Lenin Sosa will be added to Team Venezuela, as Jose Altuve will not be participating in the World Baseball Classic. For those in the United States, all World Baseball Classic broadcasts and streaming will be on Fox Sports Channel. So if 4 a.m. Central Time is too early for you, you'll have to record Murakami's first World Baseball Classic action. Chicago White Sox groundskeeper Roger Bossard was elected into the MLB Groundskeeper Hall of Fame. If you are like me and didn't know there was an MLB Groundskeeper Hall of Fame, there's the Association of Major League Baseball Groundskeepers, and to be eligible, you must have at least 5 years of service being a groundskeeper at the major league level, make significant contributions to the game and to the association, and receive 75% of the vote from active members. It's a small Hall of Fame, but Roger is now the fourth Bossard to make the Groundskeeper Hall. So congratulations to Roger Bossard. So when White Sox public address announcer Gene Honda announces the White Sox staff on the home opener on Thursday, April 2nd, it'll be Hall of Famer Roger Bossard as he takes the field. The White Sox announced their player development staff for the 2026 season. You can read that full list of coaches at each minor league level on SoxMachine.com. Director of Player Development Paul Janish spoke with the media recently and shared how he comes to the decision of how to place which coaches with which minor league affiliate?
Yeah, a lot of variables go into that. Having staffs fit together, having staffs fit with, likely players that are going to be there. At the end of the day, I would tell you that the root of it goes back to the players and trying to do the best we can to put them in the position to succeed. But the fortunate thing with the guys you mentioned, the managers in particular, but just the staff in general, is we've just got a lot of people that are that they really want to work and that really want to make the players better. And there's a lot of alignment, within our group at this point. And some of those decisions are really difficult for different reasons. But at the end of the day, it comes back down to the players. And again, I feel super fortunate that we got a group that is kind of all on the same page, and really most importantly, just a group that really enjoys the work. I just think that's it's so significant, and the players feel it. It's contagious. And we talk about our minor league coaches room a lot when we're here at the complex during spring training. We've got everybody in one spot, and for lack of a better way to say it, the vibes in that room are pretty good. And so we're trying to capitalize on that momentum.
Janish is big on having high character people part of the White Sox development staff, which, in light of past events, especially with Omar Vizquel and the Birmingham Barons, is good to hear. But the White Sox continue adding new faces to the player development staff, which means new ideas being introduced. Janish shared how he balances continuing what he's put into place for the White Sox while being open to new approaches.
At the end of the day, I'm a proponent of philosophically, it is about the people, right? And we've got a lot of people. I give Chris a ton of credit, and Will Venable a ton of credit at the major league level for what they've done. And on our side, we just try to do the same thing. I referenced it earlier. You really try to put people in positions that they want to be in, and ultimately, the amount of people that we have in our group that just really love to work is, I think, unique, and definitely something that we try to be intentional about when we're adding to the group. So yeah, it's about the people, and I think we have a really good group. I'm really excited about going into spring training in the year, and to kind of touch on your point, I feel really, really confident that we have the arrow pointing in the right direction. And again, one of the difficult things about my role is trying to make sure we're being vigilant with continuing to go in that direction, and to avoid whatever seeming success that we think we've had up to this point. I say a lot, we haven't done anything yet. So just trying to promote that within our group, and just being a resource for all of our people to make sure that whatever they feel like they need to be really good at their jobs, we try to help facilitate.
The quality of play for White Sox affiliates has improved under Paul Janish. The Birmingham Barons, for a long time, struggled in Southern League play, will open 2026 as back-to-back champions, looking for a three-peat. Janish described his thought process when evaluating the direction the White Sox farm system is going.
We just try to focus on the players and remaining player-centered. When we're thinking about things, when we have ideas, whether we're talking about drills, whether we're talking about creative ways to make guys better. It's something that we keep at the forefront. What is the player going to feel? What is the player going to see when they walk into the complex, when they walk into the affiliate, during the season? And it's something that we just try to pay a lot of attention to, with regards to where we are and, what we're excited about. It's really the brand of baseball that we're playing. And, we talk about Birmingham a lot, and it's really cool that they've won the championship the last couple of years. And, one of the things we point to is, it means something to get to AA with us. We're trying to create a system where the players know and understand, you play well to move up, and, you play a certain way. And I'm not saying everybody has to be the same. Skill sets are different, but what we do think is important is that our players show up, is kind of the terminology that we use. And again, fast forward, when you're talking about guys going to the big league level, it's there's a ton of things that go into that, and obviously skill sets are important, and you want them all to be talented, big, strong, fast, jump high, and all that. But there's a lot of variables that they have to deal with, outside the lines at that level, and so we place a lot of emphasis on trying to prepare them just as much physically as we do mentally, and the way that our players are going about their business. And we definitely, between the lines, that's the main thing. We try to keep the main thing. But I'm down here in Arizona right now. We have a performance camp going on, And, to watch the work that these guys are putting in January is really, really encouraging. And it's contagious, man. And I could highlight a couple of our players, that they get a lot of notoriety because of their ability. But what I would highlight about those players is the way that they work, right? And for us to have the ability to point at those guys and say, look, that's how they do it. This is how we do it is kind of, from a macro view, what I would point to.
One of the coaching promotions for the White Sox is former Oakland Athletics infielder Chad Pinder. He was bumped up from coaching Kannapolis in 2025 to the Charlotte Knights in 2026. Pinder will have a key job in this upcoming season, as eventually he'll see the top White Sox prospects in Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Braden Montgomery before they make their way to Chicago in 2026. Janish explained why he paired Pinder with Charlotte.
Level of trust is extremely high. His relatively speaking, having just played, and just getting done in 2023 plan, his ability to communicate with players. Again, there's a lot that goes into it, but at the end of the day, it's a really important level, right? And then you trust him to go there and to create an environment where the guys are going to work. It can inadvertently at times, but AAA can become a little bit of a holding tank and a level where older guys kind of, can become a little disgruntled at times. And we just want to make sure that we're emphasizing, the work at that level. Like you're not done yet. And to be honest, like you're just getting started in a lot of cases at that level. So there were some variables there. Some of the players that we think are going to be there this year, played into that a little bit, but tremendous amount of trust in Chad, and I'm confident that he's going to accomplish whatever his goals are in this game, and have those opportunities, in all likelihood probably sooner than later. And for the time being, we're fired up to have him and excited about him being in Charlotte.
Speaking of Montgomery, Janish is very high on him, not just for his playing ability, but his desire to be great in the majors. The plan, it sounds like from Janish, is having Montgomery work defensively in center field this upcoming season.
He works as hard as anybody in the organization, which again is a benefit to us because we can point to him and highlight that, and that's beneficial not just for himself but for his teammates. So if and when that time comes, hopefully I'll be the first one on the bandwagon and excited to see how he does. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time for him. We forget he just completed his first pro season, right? First full season. So while we are very excited about him and I have a ton of confidence in Braden, he's just getting going. And ironically, to give him more credit, like, some of the biggest development he had last year was base running. We're making him play center field defensively, from, playing with a lot of assertiveness, defensively in the outfield and running the bases is what I would point to. We talk a lot about his offensive capabilities, but he has a really, really strong desire to be a complete player, and he works at it. So it's exciting. I'm excited for his year that's coming up, and we'll see where the road leads.
Chad Pinder also spoke with the media, and he's excited to get started with the Charlotte Knights. His goal is hoping to leverage his previous Major League experience to help the White Sox prospects make that jump from AAA to the majors.
How much I love to be around the game, in a clubhouse, pulling on the same rope as guys, like just fighting for something. I really enjoy that competitive aspect of the game, and the relationships that you make. Plenty of players, much more talented than I was, even on the teams that I played on in the minor leagues coming up, that may have not gotten the same opportunity as I. Also, the flexibility going up to a team where the infield was pretty much solidified with the Olsen and Chapman and Simeon and Jed Lowry's. Like, we had extremely talented players there, but having the flexibility to go out in the outfield, kind of just saying, like, I'll play wherever you want me. I just want to be here. I want to be a part of this, I think was a reason that I was able to do that. And I think that's a reason why, like, I just love being part of a team and getting the opportunity with the White Sox, which I'm extremely grateful for, to do the same, just in a different aspect, and to be able to help players move along in their careers, help them become, major league ready guys, help give them an edge, help seamlessly help them with the transition that it is from AAA minor leagues to the big leagues.
This will be Pinder's second year managing in the White Sox minor leagues. Last year, the Cannonballers were 64 and 68 overall under Pinder, finishing both halves with identical 32 and 34 records. Pinder shared what he learned in his first year of managing baseball.
I think last year being my first year on this side of the game, learning very quickly that you cannot assume anything, right? Like, whether that be where guys are playing, how players digest information, how players learn. Ultimately, like, clarity is king, right? Like, how am I portraying messages? How are they receiving messages? Am I also spending more time listening and digesting what they're saying and what their body language is? You know, at this level, at the AAA level, these guys are much more polished. A lot of them have played in the big leagues. They have their routines. So really paying attention to the things that, you know, I'm not far removed from. You know, I was playing in AAA in 2023. Just paying attention to the feel of the clubhouse and the lessons that I learned in terms of not only like rules and running game. And there's so much that goes into that question that I know that I will take forward. And I'm extremely fortunate. I know they announced the full staff here, but the entire staff that's here in Charlotte with me has experience in AAA coaching. Both two guys have had experience managing in winter ball. Two guys have had experience bench coaching in winter ball. Like, I have no doubt that I will continue to learn, and that's the situation. That's the place that I want to be in this game. And so, like, I don't want to stop learning wherever my 2 feet are. And Paul and New and Grant and Nev and Josh have put together an amazing crew down in the player development system that I'm excited to continue to grow with and learn with.
One of the White Sox prospects that I think could generate a lot of helium in rising up rankings is left-handed pitcher Christian Oppor. Not only because our James Fegan will continue pounding the table for him to get more attention, but Pinder's also a big fan watching Oppor pitch for Kannapolis last year.
I remember the first game he threw, when the ball came out of his hand, I looked at Doris. I'm like, dude, what? This guy's not going to be here long. Like, he has got a special arm. And, you know, I didn't have him the year before. Jacob Doris did. He was his pitching coach in the AZL. And I know Doris raved about the maturity that he saw from the year he had him till the time in Kannapolis, and his conviction in his routine, his pitches. Obviously, it's nice to have 98 in the tank from the left side. He's exciting. Like, he is a name that people should definitely be excited about. And he did an amazing job last year of, number one, putting his name on the map, but also like keeping his nose down and just continuing to go.
Finally, Pinder is excited to get started as he and his wife Taylor make Charlotte their home, and they have 2 young kids. But Pinder's big on player development and how it's an everyday process. He wants to be a valuable resource for all White Sox prospects. It's expected to see quite a few players make the trek between Charlotte and Chicago this upcoming season.
I live in Charlotte. So I have a 5 and a 2-year-old wife, married. So to be able to have this experience with them while they're so young, I mean, you guys follow baseball. You guys have done this for a long time. You know how this game is, you know how the travel is, you know, the sacrifice on both sides, like from the player side, from the media side, to be able to do this where I live and share that with my family. I may never get that opportunity again. Right. Like, and then on the flip side, from the baseball side, like, I firmly believe, like, in development, like, it doesn't stop, right? Like, it does not stop. It doesn't stop when you get into the big leagues. Like, Marcus Semien, you guys had him. You guys probably followed him. Like, what that guy did and how good he got while playing in the big leagues is a testament. Like, development does not stop past AAA. So it's proof. Like, we're here in Charlotte. We can continue to develop and we can continue to get better and prepare ourselves for the next level. And to have the crop of players that are coming in with the staff that they've put together here, I'm extremely excited to iron out some of those things. Like, what are we going to attack? Is it, the X's and O's? These guys are good baseball players already. Like, yes, we can help out with those little nuances, but like, how do you prepare for a pinch hit? How do you prepare to go in on defense in the 9th inning in the big leagues when the game's on the line? How do you, like, what inning do you go start getting ready to pinch hit. Like, do you know who's in the bullpen? Do you know who pitched the night before? Like those little like nuances and those edges that I had to learn on the fly in the big leagues. Like if at any time one of our staff members can give a player the answers to the test before it happens, like we've done our job. At times it's not all X's and O's because these guys, they're better than I was when I was in AAA. Like these guys are extremely talented. I saw it in Kannapolis as well. Like those guys are so much further along in their development than I was at 18, 19, 20, and 21 years old. And that's obviously a testament to the era that we're in with technology and the ability to all the online coaching and the drills and the stuff you see on YouTube. But yeah, those are the two things, you know, my family and being able to experience it, and then, you know, helping these guys and give them the edge that maybe they can take to the big league level and help win ball games.
Continuing the White Sox news roundup as we discuss their latest additions with the free agent signing of Seranthony Dominguez and Lamonte Wade Jr. Joining me is Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan. And hello, James. Chris Getz said the White Sox are going to be creative in the remaining days of free agency before spring training because they have that payroll flexibility after trading Luis Robert Jr. to the New York Mets. And he spends that payroll flexibility on a reliever. Is this same old White Sox, James Fegan, with the White Sox signing Seranthony Dominguez, or do you see another avenue here by the White Sox adding a high leverage reliever to their bullpen?
I guess I'd say same old, more. Well, first of all, I think Getz kind of promised to be active, but the timing would suggest that he was less foreshadowing and more like telling us something he had already done, that, you know, they're probably pretty far down the road with Seranthony Dominguez for it to break right after the trade. I guess I'd buy more the same old White Sox if it's like, you know, a contention year and they're signing like 2 to 3 relievers and they're the biggest outlay of the entire offseason. Otherwise, we're just like kind of opposed to them signing relievers ever, which I don't. Generally, I think where the White Sox have been the last couple of years, just anytime they sign a major league contract, I'm like, yeah, good for them. They should be doing things as opposed to not doing things. I think it's, if anything, certainly last year's team, we saw them not spend any relievers whatsoever free agency, and then, you know, 2024, obviously none of the people they signed really worked out really well. And if you are going to try to add value via free agency or add someone who's like an asset or, you know, makes the team function more, it's probably better to spend a little bit higher tier than like, you know, what's like kind of the cheapest, you know, major league level deal guy you can get. Obviously there's a lot of variance for that, as we saw with the type of season Brebbia had when they brought him in as that being kind of the most premium addition they got. So they definitely got somebody with like high end stuff. There's a lot more control risks with Seranthony than maybe other really, like Pete Fairbanks, I think would be the other side of the spectrum, where looking at the missed numbers, you kind of wonder if he's like losing a little bit of like the juice, but he's executing at a level where he's, you know, throwing strikes and, you know, still getting like closing on saves and controlling the damage a little bit more, where it's like he seems to be managing his decline phase a bit more than somebody who walked 5/9 last season, where, you know, if something slips, maybe that goes a bit more violently, but a little bit more upside. I would say like their history of signing a free agent leader and flipping him for like anything of consequence, not many great examples of the last 20 years for the White Sox of doing that in any real form. And I think you should focus on, you know, what does he bring to the team and how much does he make things orderly? And I think there are probably points last year watching this team, and, you know, certainly all the leads that they lost, where it's like, yeah, maybe if they had something back here, maybe if Grant Taylor didn't become the closer within like a month of arriving in the majors, that would be better for things operationally going forward. And maybe you don't lose some of the games, and you know, in terms of going to extra innings and longer usage for pitchers, or just like if the whole thing with this team is like, all right, they need to take a step forward, they need to be closer to 500 this year, we need to see real progress towards like a team that can compete for a playoff spot in 2027 or 2028, maybe having a functional bullpen end of the game sort of hierarchy makes that a little bit more conceivable. And is worth doing. I think just generally improving the team is worth doing, giving a more watchable product for the people to tune every night, given the bad attendance situation, bad TV viewership situation, bad revenue situation that is also being cited up and down the organization. Just making the product a little bit better, more watchable, more typical, being able to lock home games that other teams are. It's not bad. There's risks in the signing. There's risks in all signings, but I'm generally like in favor of them doing things rather than not doing things. If they were competing for a division and the Tigers need to upgrade the bullpen and the White Sox need to upgrade the bullpen, maybe we could compare a little bit more like, did they do it as efficiently, as effectively as like this other team was? But from where they're at, just like, yeah, they signed someone. He's decent. He has postseason experience. He's someone that contenders trusted in late innings. Why not? This seems like just a logical move for them, even if it's not like inspiring or at least even like the interesting shot the way that Murakami is, even though Murakami could go way worse than this move could go. It seems like a standard thing for a baseball team to do, to sign a good reliever. They got one now. Great.
Yeah, I posed the question that way because instantly I think the reaction for White Sox fans is, why are we spending $10 million a season the next 2 years on a reliever when everybody knows the White Sox need outfield help? Like, why didn't you go sign a real outfielder? And we'll talk about that in a moment here on the podcast. But I'm with you, James, that this situation is a bit different for the White Sox than when, say, Rick Hahn signed a injured Joe Kelly when he already had Kendall Graveman and Liam Hendricks on hand in an attempt to build a super bullpen, completely ignoring right field and handed it off to Oscar Colas. And that obviously did not go well for the White Sox. Here, the White Sox were 15-36 in one-run games last season. And even though I was skeptical, you made the point, Jim's made the point on Sox Machine, Jordan Leisure pitched really well for the White Sox in the last couple of months of the season. And you got Grant Taylor, and now you have Seranthony Dominguez. And I remember the point that you made last year when we were previewing the season, James, at spring training, and how the White Sox pitching coaches knew that the lack of velocity that they had in the bullpen to start the season was going to be a concern, and that anyone that threw harder than 95 miles an hour that went on the waiver wire, the White Sox would be interested in picking them up. Now you add Dominguez, who can hit 99 miles per hour. According to Baseball Savant, his average velocity with a four-seamer last year was 97 miles per hour. You have these guys now in the back end of your bullpen that have a lot more velocity on hand. And I feel like Will Venable now, James, has more options to work with in high leverage situations than he did last year. And if they can improve that one-run record by 10 games, if they're closer to 500 in 50 one-run games this upcoming season, they can go from maybe a 60-win team last year to 70. And to your point, they are inching closer to being 500.
Yeah, and I agree, and to take that and then put it towards like a long-term rebuild point, they have at least said that they want Grant Taylor to work more multi-inning outings this year, as at least maybe something that's nudging him towards at least being a unique weapon that kind of takes more advantage of his talents than being a pure reliever, or theoretically something that nudges him even closer to like going back to rotation being a possibility. Something that came up a lot last year was like, well, if we pitch Grant Taylor 2 innings, then he's down 2-3 days. And if we have like, if we do that the first game of a series that we have a lead in, are we up a creek as far as protecting a lead for like the rest of the series? Are we like just going to punt on trying to win the series because we worked Grant Taylor 2 innings this one time? Ideally, having a healthy season last year, that's less true, but also, hey, we have a 1-run lead in the 9th. Seranthony Dominguez doesn't feel like we're, fighting with one hand behind our back, or you could go Leisure and Dominguez, or there's more, just having more depth in terms of like guys you actually trust in high leverage, that basically any high leverage game or situation where you can protect the lead, like Taylor doesn't need to necessarily be a part of it, or a bit farther away from that, frees you up to be a little bit more creative with his usage. Theoretically, it could be something that's helpful for a development, even if it's signing a 31-year-old reliever for a team that lost 100 games last year and seems, from our traditional analytic-minded oriented approach to like what a rebuilding team should develop or value, still contributes to that somehow, hopefully logistically.
What are you hoping to learn when again, we have Sox Fest coming up? Podcast listeners, James and I will both be there covering the event, talking to Getz, talking to manager Will Venable, and all the players that show up. And we are sending James to spring training. He'll be there on the opening day of spring training, and Chris Getz is scheduled to speak to the media kicking off spring training. But the walk rate for Dominguez, I don't know if it's fair to call it a red flag, but if there is an area of concern for White Sox fans with this signing, is that Dominguez has posted some pretty high walk rates when it comes to relievers, more than 10%, and that can make some games kind of look Alex Colomé-ish, where Dominguez is putting free runners on base, using the example, it's a 1-run lead for the White Sox, and maybe that makes things feel intense when he's out there. But then again, when he's posting like 30% strikeout rates, not a lot of White Sox relievers are doing that last year. So it seems like he can get himself out of jams. What are you hoping to learn about what the White Sox are hoping to improve upon with Dominguez's walk rate, if it is something that needs to be improved upon?
Yeah, I would say it's a red flag. Last year was a career high by a good amount, 13.8%, 10 would kind of been his crest in the past. Certainly for someone you're putting in the biggest moment of the game, basically a closer from our expectation, as much as like they'll adhere to that title at all. That's pretty high. That's on the high end. That's something like I don't think a contending team would find that as acceptable to put as like, this is our top dog reliever and he walks 14% of the time, unless he's like, doing prime Edwin Diaz type of strikeout rates. And for Dominguez, especially for someone who maybe got a chance in Philadelphia to be that closer for a contending team, not being willing to attack the zone as much as his stuff says he could is kind of the reason they cited for why he didn't really stick in that role, even if his walk rates were a bit more control there. So yeah, I think it's a big issue. It's probably central. What my question is it a mechanical adjustment they have in mind for him? Because this is a guy who basically went from 3 walks per 9 in that territory to 5 last year. Did something kind of slip? Or is it the big thing that was kind of interesting to Dominguez and got his, back in like where he's, pitching 5 games of the World Series, was that he added that splitter. And traditionally, if you talk to Brian Bannister about walks with a lot of guys the White Sox adds, it's not like a mechanical adjustment. It's usually something more arsenal oriented, like let's give him something that he can just pepper the zone with. You usually see that in the form of Shane Smith and Sean Burke, throwing sinkers in addition to their 4-seamers last year. Yoendrys Gomez being a guy who could never throw strikes enough to stick in the rotation. When he came back up after going back down to Charlotte, he's throwing 3 different types of fastballs. And those are all things he can kind of just say, like, aim for the middle and let it work, as opposed to like trying to paint with his secondaries a little bit. So the splitter was obviously something that made Dominguez more viable against left-handed hitters. Now, the splitter is not typically a pitch you put in the zone a ton, but do they see an avenue with that maybe makes him or allows him to be more aggressive in the how he attacks and gets at that walk rate in some way, or can be expanded upon? Or is it, there got to be some cases where there's somebody they see something mechanically that he can do to repeat his delivery a bit better, or they see something that projects better health wise. I don't know. That would be something to find out for sure. I think that their plan is going to be like telling this guy, like, you have great stuff, please attack the zone. I don't know what they're going to say to him that, makes it click in a degree that never has before. But surely with this level of outlay, they have to have plans involved. I mean, as someone who spent a lot of this offseason, like, unpacking plans about Everson Pereira, I think this is a higher spending tier that I think at any point with any, like, the level to which, like, every org wants to put like their player dev, like, fingerprints on things. Almost even signings I think are weird for other teams, or trades I can't figure, I kind of like, it's almost a default response to be like, well, I'd love to hear what their plan is for this. Mm-hmm. Even like, hey, that sounds really crazy, but I bet they have an interesting idea for how this will work. And certainly now with them being a rebuilding team and so many of their projects being, as Bannister phrases it, upside surprises, I think if almost everybody the White Sox add at this point, you're kind of asking, it's like, so I wonder what Fuller sees here. So I wonder what Bannister sees here. And certainly when they send $10 million a year on a reliever, I wonder what Bannister sees here. It's got to be something that's not, pocket change around these parts.
Yeah, when you go to Baseball Savant, you can see pitch type and the success opposing hitters had against Dominguez. And the two numbers that jump out, one, the whiff rate that he got on a sweeper and split finger, 49% on both pitches. That is crazy good. And obviously he wants to get into that situation where he gets ahead of batters. Righties, he's going to throw the sweeper. Lefties, he's going to throw the split finger. Opposing batters hit just 132 against the sweeper last year. Left-handed batters hit 114 against that split finger. So obviously that is where Dominguez wants to go when he gets ahead of batters. I'm curious of what Bannister thinks of the sinker. It has not been a good pitch the last 2 years in the sense that Dominguez is just not getting good results. Last year, this two-seamer only generated 11.4% whiff rate. Now, the good news is that opposing batters had an average launch angle of 2 degrees, which means that's a lot of grounders. So if that is the pitch that Dominguez has to throw when he's behind 3-1 the count, here's a two-seamer. I'm okay with you putting the ball in play because you can't get lift on it. But if opposing batters are going to hit 364 against you on that pitch and you're boasting a 13% walk rate, it can get tricky for Dominguez in high leverage situations for the White Sox. So I think there's a case here where Dominguez could be a very effective reliever, and this works out great for the White Sox, which he is at high leverage situations, and he gives everyone, including the White Sox coaching staff, confidence that he can pull through for the team and be able to hold one-run leads, taking advantage of the velocity of his four-seamer and getting to situations where he gets strikeout batters with his sweeper at split finger. But if he doesn't have control and he's throwing this two-seamer that opposing batters seem to do a really good job the last couple of years of putting the ball in play, that's where I think I'm wondering if that's a situation where things go sideways for Dominguez and the White Sox. So I'm curious to see and hear what you learn, James, when you do get a chance to talk to Brian Bannister and what the White Sox are hoping to work with on Dominguez, if it is any mechanical changes to help improve that walk rate. Now, the other signing the White Sox made that I thought was a bit interesting is that they signed veteran outfielder and sometimes first baseman Lamonte Wade Jr. to a minor league contract. Now, in 2024 and 2023, Wade Jr. had productive offensive seasons for the San Francisco Giants, posting a 119 and 120 weighted runs created plus. He was 19% and 20% better than league average hitter. And for the White Sox, they need more league average hitters. But last year was a career worst year for Wade. In 80 games with the Giants, he had a 52 weighted runs created plus, so 48% below league average, and a negative 1.6 WAR season according to Fangraphs. Wade was swimming in the Andrew Vaughn with the White Sox waters last year in productivity, and that was not good. And Wade only hit 2 home runs for the Giants in 242 plate appearances. The one thing that Lamonte Wade Jr. does well in his career is that he draw walks. He's got a career 12.5% walk rate, and when he's batted at least 250 as far as the average, he's been a productive offensive player with a above league average weighted runs created plus. When he doesn't bat 250, he's very replaceable. What makes this interesting signing to me, James, is that the White Sox already have Jarred Kelenic as a minor league contract. So now they got Lamonte Wade Jr. competing. And let me just run down the outfielders here that are going to be competing for spots in the 26-man roster again. It's Andrew Benintendi, Luis Angel Acuna, which I think gets us opening will be the center fielder, Derek Hill, who's got that split contract, Everson Pereira, who they acquired, Brooks Baldwin, carryover from last year, and the veterans on minor league deals, Jarred Kelenic and Lamonte Wade Jr. It's early. We're not even spring training yet. But with this signing, James, does Wade Jr. have a good chance of making the 26-man roster?
Well, it's very early. Like off the page, I would think, I mean, he's not, I don't know, like Kelenic obviously had statistically an awful year last year, not even good in AAA. And based on what he did, like you wouldn't think it's likely, but they obviously talk about him with like a lot of excitement, and clearly him being a national, he got to work with Fuller a lot, so like they have a more fleshed out idea of what they're trying for with him. I think it's probably a bit easier to say like Kelenic could play like a fine corner outfield, whereas like Wade's metrics have been pretty poor there for a bit now, and you definitely saw the Giants like not use him a ton in the outfield. So I'd wonder if he's a bit more in like, outfield, like part of his bag technically, but I don't think he could win necessarily. I don't think him like hitting really well and getting like basically full-time role would still see him like being full-time in the outfield. I feel like it's a bit more likely he'd be in that DH first base mix a bit more, like even if things went great. The thing, and it's true for Kelenic too, but at least he has more of a reputation as a fastball hitter, is like fastball hitting just like went off a cliff for Wade last year. And, it's never been like a huge bat speed profile. And you see someone who kind of is really good at chase and is really good at like drawing walks and being patient, that usually is a difficult profile to perform super well against fastballs against if you're like seeing everything deep and you're a bit more passive oriented swing wise. So I wonder if like there's something about his operation mechanically that they think they can shorten up where he can be more aggressive against fastballs. Otherwise, like that's a bit like looking at that just simply from a scouting standpoint, you're like, I want to see you prove that you can still turn around fastballs before I really start getting excited about you projecting things. Cause that's kind of, we've seen lots of hitters who, can't figure out spin, miss you, Diane Viciedo. And that is a problem of its own. From a scouting perspective, fastball poor performance is a bigger red flag, because that's kind of a simplified attack where you can be attacked and defeated in the zone is usually a bit more dire of a problem than you are getting coaxed out of the zone. So I would probably slot him below Kelenic, just on Kelenic's reputation as, still someone who's putting up big bat speed numbers, still someone who, when he was good recently, 2023, I don't know, recently you want to put it, Wade obviously succeeded more, but you saw him crushing fastballs, where like, if that guy can't stop chasing, it's a limited player, but it's potentially still a useful big leaguer if he can hit right-handed fastballs all the time. Whereas if someone just isn't turning around velocity anymore, it's a bat first profile, that's usually a tough road to hoe. So with Kelenic having a bit more defense, having a bit more bat speed, I'd probably lean him as the more likely out of the two of them with Wade. I don't think anybody's getting crunched out of the outfield picture at this point. And to your point about like seeing them sign a reliever before an outfielder, I discourage like getting too wrapped up about like sequencing in January of moves. Like obviously if they do address the outfield before spring training, or, the way markets are with guys getting, Michael A. Taylor got signed in spring training. He wound up sticking around the whole year and playing over 100 games. It's even more towards like, maybe not even until March where we're like, man, why haven't they done something into the outfield? That said, if they don't add to this outfield mix and they spent, $20 million on a reliever, I think it'd be right to question that with the way their roster is. Cause like they need more proven candidates there. They need more people who can either, have hit more recently or have more, safety as far as like being able to perform offensively, or they need more people who can kind of at least credibly defend. It's a lot of little like kind of one-dimensional players or kind of bounce back candidates in that group right now that you want to go in a season with. So I think it's shallow right now. And, to be debating Wade, who's coming off of such kind of a concerning performance, like, can he make the roster? I think that kind of shows that they need to keep adding candidates. Obviously, he's been a good player, and if they bounce the back and looks great, it's not someone who I look at like, this is almost a sure thing that he makes the team, the type of NRI. I think it's more like, this is a worthwhile, see if he can bounce back sort of NRI. And then if he does, if he's looking good in spring, then we talk about where he fits type of tier of the NRIs.
So I'm speculating here, podcast listeners. I don't have any real info, but I wonder, James, if this is the Mike Tauchman signing, because you do see White Sox fans hoping that the White Sox do bring back Mike Tauchman, who was a productive offensive player for the White Sox last year. But this is where I'm speculating and just asking aloud, Is there a concern from the White Sox regarding as far as the leg injuries with Mike Tauchman, that they don't feel comfortable bringing Tauchman back because they can't count on him being healthy? But we still want somebody who could walk like Mike Tauchman, who can be a productive offensive player. Instead of Mike Tauchman in 2025, in 2026, it's Lamonte Wade Jr. Could that be the type of angle and thinking for the White Sox?
I'm skeptical to say that because I think that's still a downgrade. Like, Tauchman came off of a year with the Cubs that was pretty similar to what he wound up doing with the White Sox in a lot of ways, and got a guaranteed deal off of it. Like, he got non-tendered, but he wasn't at NRI level. And yeah, obviously the knee, like all the stuff with his legs limited him defensively over the course of the season. But before that, like, not that far removed from somebody who played an okay center field, had some pretty big catches for the 2023 team. So I still think that's a tier above what they've like shelled out for the outfield so far. Like, both Taylor and Tauchman, or not Taylor, what's his name? Austin Slater and Tauchman got, guaranteed deals off of like a season of maybe not great, but like where they deserve guaranteed deals, where like what Wade kind of slipped to last year is more explicitly like buy low NRI, see what he's got territory. I still don't think they've done something like as proven a commodity as Tauchman was coming off last year. And I think probably in a world, not that I've like asked them about it directly, but in a world where like Tauchman is healthy last year, is what he's able to do, offensively. And if you weren't seeing him do injured or having the end of season surgery, I think he'd be a pretty appealing candidate. It's just tender him arbitration, and he's not going to break the bank there. It's just more of a question of like, probably puts him below a tier where you get like $5 million, which is probably what he'd be due ARB-wise, or at least in that territory, 3 to 5 or something like that. So I still don't think they put that kind of level of outlay out there where I can kind of give them credit like, hey, you've effectively replaced it so far. And I think I felt better about that platoon working because they were being asked to do something that wasn't really out of line with what they had done before. Like, Slater hadn't had a great year against righties, but he was like league average-ish and gotten on base against them the year before, even while dealing with the injuries. I think they've been shy of that with what they've invested in the outfield so far, which is why, with the way they've talked about adding, and the fact that, as many people had to point out, they only spent half Lilius Robert money on Seranthony Dominguez from an AAV's perspective. I still think there has to be more coming for the outfield, even if it's just filling out a greater depth of candidates. And obviously they're going to announce more NRIs later this week, and who knows how much it'll be real additions or just kind of making official guys we already know about. But I think there has to be more coming there before I point someone out as the Mike Tauchman of the group. Maybe that could be Kellenic, but that'd be still a whole different type of investment in player. I still think they have to find more security there before I say they've done something similar to last year in terms of that respect.
Understand. I just think with Tauchman, the bad hamstring, the torn meniscus, it's a lot of wear and tear in the lower half. I'm skeptical of the White Sox to bring Tauchman back, but I think you're right, James. If Tauchman didn't have a torn meniscus, if he didn't have a pulled hamstring, he'd be making $3 million with the White Sox, and White Sox fans would be like, hey, there's your right fielder.
And
okay
from the way they talked about him all year about how vital he was to the clubhouse, if they said like, hey, he's got we don't know if he'll be like absolutely full go, but we need him here, he's a big piece of what we're doing, I'd be like, all right, cool.
All right, so again, even with Lamonte Wade Jr. in tow, it's a lot of not sure if these misfit toys could help the White Sox outfield be better than the worst unit in Major League Baseball. They're not projected to be the worst unit in Major League Baseball. Thank you, Rockies. But
you were worried about them being the worst unit in franchise history.
I know, I was. It's still on the table. If these guys they don't pick up their play, it's still on the table. Now, someone who is not on the table that I think a lot of White Sox fans were clamoring for was Harrison Bader. Harrison Bader signed a 2-year contract with the San Francisco Giants on Monday worth $20.5 million. So a very similar deal that the White Sox signed Dominguez to. So James Fegan, we have this wonderful case study this upcoming season to compare and contrast if Chris Getz made the right call. Now, one thing I do want to add, and I'm assuming here again, podcast listeners, but I'm assuming that Chris Getz was trying to get both Dominguez and Harrison Bader, and they just ended up losing out to the Giants in regards to signing Harrison Bader. And hopefully we get more insight on that this upcoming weekend at Sox Fest. We do get the case study of if you've got X amount of money and you can sign one of two players, who do you sign? The high leverage reliever or an aging outfielder who could still play a little bit of center field? I'm curious on how this plays out, but what do you think of the deal that Harrison Bader signed with San Francisco today for the 2 years, $20.5 million?
It seems like fair value given like there's a little bit of risk of it. I don't think his offense has been as steady as last year would look. And, that's probably like as good of a season you could hope for. And you're betting a lot of defensive metrics for somebody who's, going into the 30s, has been banged up a little bit. So I think it's pretty fair given as he had an awesome season last year, but there's also a bit of risk of it. He did talk to like the New York Post. I don't even think the deal's official about it. And why would you not say it if you were doing it? But he did mention he wanted to be on a winning team. And that's obviously an advantage that the Giants would have over the White Sox a little bit to it. But yeah, I'd rather have Harrison Bader. It's a Bader position kind of solved. I'm not the one running a bullpen every day, so I can't measure the impact of Seranthony Dominguez in terms of like forehead wrinkles on Will Venable. That's like a big thing that was bothering him about stressing him out. But it at least seems like a more traditional, I don't want to say safer necessarily, but it's like, I think if they threw $20 million at Harrison Bader and it didn't work out, there's probably a bit fewer questions about why would you ever do this than there would be about like throwing it out for a reliever or for a team that lost 100 games last year. So yeah, it's probably it looks better as a way to use $20 million. Would it have been taken a little bit more for him to come to the White Sox versus going to a team that, probably can say like, we have a plan to make the playoffs in the NL West this year? I would think likely, but yeah, it definitely is. It's an easy way that we could be like, if Dominguez has had a couple blow up outings and has a 6 ERA in May and Bader's already hit 10 home runs somehow, it could look bad, or Bader could pull a hamstring and the White Sox are inexplicably 4 games over 500 in Memorial Day, and Dominguez has like 15 saves. Everyone's like, clearly this was right. We don't need to take in any more data. These 2-year contracts have been properly analyzed, and Getz is a genius. I think there's enough variance in it, or he could probably look good, look bad either way. I would lean towards Bader, but it's not one you can't necessarily equate like that. That's exactly the price it would have taken to the White Sox. And
right,
within reason of like, I don't think it's crazy what they did, or I think they definitely overpaid Dominguez a little bit to get him in, probably. I'd be more excited about a 216 for Dominguez, but that's probably maybe what the Yankees could get Dominguez on versus the White Sox. So yeah, Bader looks like a better bet. This is not, they're trying to build a contender entirely through relievers, or, complete illogical explanation for why they do this sort of difference. I would just lean Bader in this respect. If all things being equal, which you can't say necessarily that they are.
Right. No, I think those are good points, James. According to Fangraphs and Roster Resource, the best available unsigned free agent outfielders right now, Miguel Andujar, who is not a good defender, Jesse Winker, Mike Tauchman. Yeah. Mike Tauchman, Dylan Moore, Randall Gruchuk, Austin Hayes, Starlin Marte, Michael Conforto, and Tommy Pham. One of those guys, right? They need to bring in one of those guys.
I mean, that would be nice for sure. I want to lean Hayes a little bit, because I feel like that's been a both a plus bat and plus defender at the same time more recently, but has also had and the struggles are a bit more hopefully one-off medical issues with him in 2024, I want to say. But yeah, I think none of them are going to blow you away, and we're also at a point in the offseason where anything that kind of fits in the bucket of do something would probably be welcome at this point.
How would you feel if the White Sox signed Starlin Marte or even like Andrew McCutchen, as things may have gone sideways in Pittsburgh for Kutch?
McCutchen would come with a lot of I wouldn't like that. Because
I'm such a fan of him.
I'm such a fan of him too. I think it's the White Sox are positioned to be very you're selling kind of nostalgia for this player we never had.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the cachet here of I'm watching him do a 95 OPS plus out of the DH slot, but hey, I got to see Andrew McCutchen play live in person. I don't think that has that much pull here in Chicago that's not familiar with him. You'd be a big question is he going to play defense? Because you have the two catcher situation, you have Andrew Benintendi, you have Murakami. What are you doing here? I think just roster wise, it just seems like less of a fit, even if I would love covering McCutchen for sure. I'm sorry, who's the other guy?
Starling Marte.
Starling Marte. It's another he's the guy one of the White Sox decided 2022, not Joe Kelly or Kendall Graveman. I was pounding the table. Rick Hahn, go get Starling Marte. The famous story about when they really missed out on Marte is that I think it's reported somewhere. I'd have to find it and link to it, but the old thing is that there was a dispute between the Buscones when Starling Marte was an amateur, an IFA guy having a workout, and one of the guys brought a gun to the tryout with the dispute between the Buscones, and the White Sox scout on there was I'm out of here. So that was their big chance with Marte, and they went by the boards for understandable reasons. He's 37, 38?
37, yeah.
I think and I try not to lump in the Bulls in here with things, but I think just in general, maybe it's my experience as a Chicago sports fan, maybe it's just those two franchises, but I think there's a lot of instances over their history of bringing in this great player at the absolute let's have the last year of their career here at the White Sox, where you're kind of cashing in. There's so much respect for them in the locker room because what they've accomplished in the league and other cities, and the front office speaks with so much respect for them. The coaching staff loves them, and the fans are just why are you making us watch this guy who's washed up? I don't even know who he is that much. I'm not having fun. And then that negativity is directed towards, this older player, and then the clubhouse kind of, falls in line to protect one of their brethren who's kind of getting pilloried. And I just think it leads to bad feelings everywhere. It feels very let's bring Chris Paul to the Los Angeles Clippers, but at least Paul had played for the Clippers. It has that potential of it's halfway through the season. He's not good anymore. He's not this big veteran presence because it's teammates who he's never been with, who have never seen him play good, and it's a fan base that doesn't appreciate it because they've never seen him in his prime and they've never seen him good. I don't think those signings or acquisitions from to a new franchise, new city, I think they're kind of built to fail in a way where I would sooner, especially with where this team is at, with what they're trying to say they're about, I would take 1,000 Jared Kelenics and say hey, we're trying to rehab this slightly burnt sewers activewear, as I think is the phrase I use in the chat a lot. Something that hasn't ever really been fully maxed out. We're going to give our shot at it versus we're going to try to get one last, flaming ember from this fire that's long been stamped out. I think that's probably more fitting with what this team is trying to do and you can sell up to the fan base like, hey, we're trying things, we're trying to find value, we're trying to unturn every stone. We're going to be that sort of team going forward, rather than, hey, heard of this guy type of thing, where it's never even going to, even if you have, it's not going to be as good as your memory of it. So no one's going to, there's no scenario where everyone really ends up super happy out of this. Least of all, probably the player they bring in.
So you're against the Manny Ramirez, Justin Morneau type of signings. You don't want the White Sox to go that route anymore.
I don't have fond memories of hey, the season's going down the tubes. Justin Morneau is going to be ready in a month. Sort of signings to slap the Band-Aid on. I don't have fond memories of that, and I think I'm probably not alone in people who have been around the White Sox who they get their shoulders tense up at the idea of like, hey, he's going to be a great clubhouse presence with the top selling point for addition. So I think I would take all the Lamonte Wades and Jared Kelenics and like, hey, this guy was good a year ago, we're going to try to get him back sort of projects. Then this guy was great in 2015. Remember that. Now he's in his Sox uniform.
Well, James is voting for Austin Hayes. Podcast listeners, let us know in the comment section on the podcast post on SoxMachine.com what outfielders you want the White Sox to pursue. Again, it's not a very deep list as far as unsigned free agent outfielders, but I'm with James. I think the next move the White Sox have to make is find another outfielder to add to the team. And they could add a starting pitcher. Walker Buehler is out there. I'm not sure where he is injury-wise or what kind of gig he is looking for. You got the veterans. Speaking of veterans in their last hurrah, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. They still want to start games. Maybe you could bring them in. I don't know.
I mean, the same argument. It's just like, how much are you? It's obviously kind of a 1-year situation. I would, give me everybody who learned a cutter in Japan. Need to try it out over. Let's try to get a season half as good as what this guy was in his prime, and then he leaves or he retires, or like we don't really know what we do with it going forward. Whereas maybe you build an asset, maybe you have someone who's a contributor for next year, maybe you just have a route for adding to the team that you repeat going forward. I think something that's a bit more forward looking than backward looking is probably what the White Sox fan base has more of an appetite for.
I agree, but we'll see what the White Sox do next. Again, Sox Fest is coming up this weekend. There will be more interviews with White Sox personnel and players coming from James and I that you'll be able to read on SoxMachine.com, and also check out the videos that we'll be posting on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. I mentioned our YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone that's been checking out our YouTube shorts and been subscribing to our YouTube channel. We're close to 2,000 subscribers, which is a milestone. So thank you guys so much for doing so. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, you can do so at youtube.com/SoxMachine. Follow us on social media. We'll be posting things all over the accounts. We're going to be at Sox Machine on every single social media account. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. Follow us on Instagram. That's where we'll have our Sox Fest photos and videos on, at Sox Machine on Instagram. And you can also follow us on Blue Sky. We're at SoxMachine.com. James is at jrfegan.soxmachine.com. And I am josh.soxmachine.com. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at soxmachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5. We also have annual discounts we have discounts off our annual memberships, I should say. Great timing to do so. Late January, spring training is coming up. For those that are annual subscribers, especially the start of spring training, remember to update your payment information on the website as well, especially if you didn't do so after transferring over from Patreon to the updated website from last March. So that is coming up. So just a reminder. But if you aren't a subscriber, you can subscribe again at soxmachine.com/products. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.